Want to tell them that? Well, welcome to the Out of Raising Humans.
Hello, and welcome to episode 8 of the Art of Raising Humans podcast. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Sarah.
And today we want to hit a topic that is all too common going on in families and in our culture, specifically seeing it a lot in the private practice and even just in ourselves. You know, we're going to talk about negative self-talk, you know, when people really just beat themselves up. I know we even kind of alluded to this back in the Fear and Shame podcast. You know, you talked about how many of us have been raised in homes where punishment was kind of prevalent. You know, punishment was the main way, the main tool used to shift people towards change. You know, and in our culture in general, that's a lot that's used too. You know, a lot of name calling, a lot of insulting, a lot of putting people down to then try to shame them into changing. You know, those kind of things going on. And you see this happening a lot with kids. I'm sure a lot of it's exasperated by social media and the way they see people talk to each other on there, the way people bully each other, all that kind of stuff. But specifically, I want to kind of just have a conversation with you, Sarah, about not only self-talk that happens with the kids and how you hear a lot of kids kind of, I can't do this, or I'm dumb, or, you know, I'm not good at math. You know, they'll say things like that. But then also how we as parents also model that, what to do with that self-talk, you know, because I know it's all too common in our brains too. We have a voice in our head that many times beats the snot out of us when we mess up, you know, and throughout the long time I've known you, I feel like it's a really successful part of our parenting and our marriage is talking to ourselves kinder. You know, I know so many times it reveals to me when I'm mad or frustrated with the kids, when I talk to them, it's really revealing the words that come out of my mouth, you know, because obviously it's coming out of me and it really much mirrors how I talk to myself. And when I'm honest with it, what I'm doing is trying to motivate the kids with some of that negative self-talk because I believe it helped me in some way, you know, and I think that's a problem because inevitably it begins to wear you down. So just wanted to hear your thoughts on your experience with negative self-talk in your life.
Yeah, I think we all have that inner critic, and our inner critic is usually knows those spots to hit. And that could be from voices from our childhood, just experiences in life. That inner critic gets really fine-tuned, and it's hard to know what to do with the inner critic. But we all know it rips us down. I think there's a lot of us who go, oh, okay, I don't want to be motivated by my inner critic, but yet it's there, and you can just feel awful. That inner critic can just rip you apart. And I've already forgotten your question. But I was thinking about how with that voice and where you asked me what I do with it.
Yes. Okay. How has negative self-talk affected you? Like, what's the experience for you?
I have this memory when I was probably 11, maybe 12, and I was running a projector. And my whole job was just to slide. If you've ever seen an old projector, it's a very old projector. You lay this thing on and the light shines through it and you just move it so people can read the words.
Yes.
And I remember one time I moved it and I went back to my seat being all quiet and I realized it was slightly crooked. And I nearly cried. I felt so bad about it not being perfect. And I think that, now I look back at that and I go, who cares? Yeah. Who was even looking?
Exactly,
who cares? You know, but that's what our inner critic does. It rises up as this giant monster and it makes things really big, and we just get smaller and smaller and smaller. And we are hoping that next time I'll make that projector line completely straight, or I'll whatever it is, I'll be perfect at it. But we're just not going to be perfect. And I really started to try, I don't remember when, but I remember this turn in my life where I realized how critical and how it was just ripping me apart to be so critical to, so hard on myself. And so I started jumping into more of self-compassion and giving empathy to myself. And that had just never occurred to me before.
Me neither. Yeah.
To sit and go, if I make a mistake, to actually hold myself in that space and and have compassion for myself.
Yeah.
I thought, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to give yourself 50 lashes so next time you won't make the same mistake. But what we're finding is that doesn't...
Not true. Yeah.
It doesn't work the way we think it does. Was I super nervous to make that projector crooked again? Yeah, but did it give me confidence? Did it put me in a good space? No. Giving myself compassion in these moments of mess up, that's a really silly example. Obviously, we have things where we've seriously messed up, but giving yourself compassion will allow yourself to grow and allow yourself to reflect on the moment.
Yeah.
And go, okay, that's great. This is a learning opportunity. It doesn't have to be this doomsday, I'm a horrible person because I messed up. I can stop and go and look back at and go, what did I learn from that moment? What did I like? What went well? What didn't go well? And how would I change it?
Yeah. Well, I think what you're saying is, this ability then to really take responsibility for what happened. Like even in that situation, the idea of the projector, right, is I think the fear a lot of parents have in doing that to themselves, but also even showing that to their kids when they mess up, is it lets them off the hook.
Yeah.
When really that's not true at all. It's like when I'm beating myself up, I'm not actually taking responsibility. I'm just punishing myself for messing up. If I can actually show myself empathy and self-compassion, what we know about the brain is I actually then can get into the prefrontal cortex where the ability to take responsibility for the thing and do it differently or better next time actually lies. I mean, how many of us, such a big thing in our culture is dieting, losing weight. Dr. Becky Bailey from Conscious Discipline has a great example of how people do this all the time when it comes to eating, that what they'll do, that inner critic is first, they'll be like, I'm going to be strong. I'm not going to eat any sweets this week. And they'll go to work and they'll sit down in the work area and they'll see somebody walk in and there's donuts there. And you're like, I'm not going to eat those donuts. They're not good for me. And then that guy will eat the donuts. You're like, oh my gosh, look at him eating the donuts. Those aren't good. And you'll immediately, instead of criticizing you'll criticize them and you start to go, look at me, I'm better than that person. So really you're just doing the opposite. But she says by the end of the week, and we've all been there, by the end of the week, you're like, your ability to hold off on those sweets has kind of been lost. And so you eat a bunch and then you beat yourself up and criticize yourself the same way you criticize the person at work for doing it. And that's the problem with the criticism, is it never ends. And even if it turns away from me, then I criticize you for not doing it as good as me. And I know I have felt that many times in our marriage throughout the time where I would start to get really critical of you because I'm really good at something and somehow you should be as good as me at that. And it becomes like a really, I want to say toxic type thing that happens in a relationship,
Yeah, it's just a place of judgment and a place of, okay, how are you doing? And let me compare myself to you and let me compare. It just everything starts breaking down when you're in that place of the critic and that negative self-talk.
So I know for me, the way I started to learn this especially is I wanted to get better at not being so mad. So quickly, anger, it was the thing that I could quickly access as a parent. And I wanted so badly to stop yelling and get better at that, to get better. And early on, I would make a commitment to the kids. So I would do all types of things. I'd be like, kids, I'm gonna not yell anymore. I'm gonna work on this, right? And inevitably, by the end of the day, I've already messed that up, because change is hard. And then I found out what I would do is I'd get really mad at myself. And I'd say things like, you suck. What is your problem? Like, you can't even do it for one day? I mean, how hard was it to do one day? I mean, your kids are going to grow up just seeing you as this mean monster. So all of these kind of things would go on. And part of me was like, that's what I need to do to stop yelling. But then I found I actually was more likely to yell quicker when that was going on, because then I almost saw the kids as like, oh no, I almost want to be away from them. Like being near them is another opportunity to fail. If I'm around them and there's sibling conflict or they're not doing things as fast as I'd like them to, I'm ready to just jump on it and then beat myself up again. And so what I noticed was shaming myself, judging myself perpetuated the problem. It wasn't actually freeing me to be something better, So I found I actually got better at not yelling, not when I beat myself up, but when I actually gave myself some positive intent, when I actually showed myself some grace. But the fear was if I did that, like I said, I'm letting myself off the hook. Like I need to be punished for doing the thing I said I wasn't going to do, because that seemed to be the model I had.
Yeah, I think my brain just exploded with a lot of ideas, but But I think we have some great examples. I was thinking, how do we talk to our kids about negative self-talk? And my son recently read the Wright brothers biography, and we have some great people in history. I think it's a practical look at how we do this. The Wright brothers failed a lot of times before they got that plane flying. And I know if you read Edison, I can't remember how many. He made a lot of light bulbs that didn't work before he got one that worked. And if they would have sat there and said, we can't build this airplane. Look at us. We're idiots. Why are we even trying this? No, who can put something in the air? We're not birds. They could have gone down this whole road of all their failure and all their mistakes, or it's your fault because you're not doing this good enough, or I'm not doing this good enough. And then we wouldn't be where we are today, right? But I know in both cases, they look and go, oh, that didn't work. What didn't work about it? What didn't I like about that? And so they saw it as, we haven't figured it out yet. Yeah. But that doesn't mean all pathways are over. We just got to find a different route. We got to try something different. Let me look at that. And so they didn't beat themselves up over it. They instead saw it as an opportunity because they were in that prefrontal cortex and that part of their brain that's creative, that's problem solving. And so they were able to move forward with different ideas. So coming back to you, if you give yourself that, oh, I yelled a lot today. What's my goal? What do I want to do? Instead of staying in a place of, oh, I'm just this horrible person because I did that.
Yeah, you failed again.
You can just own it. You own it. You say, okay, that's what I did. This is what I didn't like. This is what I'm going to try. And then the next day, you start over and you try that different route and you keep trying pathways until it gets you closer to where you're wanting to be and go. And how much more successful is that than don't do it, bad person. That doesn't get you where you're wanting to go as quickly as looking at your options and finding new pathways. And we can do that with ourselves in any goal in any area of life. And we can model that for our children and teach our children to do that.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I wanted to start with the voice between in ourselves, in our own head, right? Because if I'm not doing it, I think one of the most powerful things, I say this a lot. There's a lot of powerful things that I really liked. I was like, man, I think I just said the most. But anyway, one of the most powerful things that I got with my time with Dr. Becky Bailey at her conference is when she said, kids don't have an inner voice from like 0 to 7. I mean, that's not like, perfectly there, but about 0 to 7, 0 to 8, they're not really having this inner critic that you're saying, this inner voice, And she said that inner voice comes online about 7 or 8 years old. And the thing that really hit me was that voice sounds a lot like us. It's really the gift that we give our kids is that voice. And so part of the legacy we leave our kids is that voice. That voice that I hear whenever I mess up typically was given to me either verbally or non-verbally by my parents, by teachers in my life, by coaches. And to me, for the most part, what you hear from clients and what I feel myself, I don't know how you feel, but it's not good enough, Kyle. It's not good enough. You need to get better. You need to improve. It's ridiculous. Stop messing up. I'm sick of it. I'm tired of it. And it was lots of times, even I remember, and I'm sure my dad didn't mean to do this, but I remember even in soccer, that's a fantastic example. It was like soccer. I'd be playing soccer. My dad was my coach, and I would mess up. And the first thing I would do when I messed up was look to the sideline to see what my dad's expression was. And typically it was disappointment, at least in my mind. He may have been looking at some other player. I think it would be disappointed. Right. But in my mind, all I saw on my dad's face was, again, are you serious? And then Sarah, with our kids playing soccer, I love soccer, but then our kids would do it. And I remember I was getting so frustrated at Abby. I was getting so mad because she wasn't performing the way I thought she should, which my dad would be like, you were doing the same thing at that age. And but most likely what I was doing, and this was the light bulb that came on, was I was just repeating the whole thing. That the thing I thought my dad did to me to motivate me, which actually didn't motivate me, I was trying to do to Abby to motivate her in some way to be a better soccer player by focusing on how much she wasn't doing well. And I know one of the coaches even said the stats show that the biggest reason why kids quit sports is the ride home. It's that whole conversation home. So that really hit me of just like, oh my gosh, like that voice that our 3 little kids are going to have in their head the rest of their life is going to sound like mine. And part of me says, well, great, because I want to influence them. But then I don't want to give them the voice that I have in my head, at least when I'm in a good place, And so I think that's why we got to be really thoughtful about the voice we're listening to, about whether we're showing ourselves empathy or self-compassion, because we're not only modeling it, but we're literally giving it to them to sit in their head and just talk to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about that reminds me of the stories. Sometimes our kids leave stuff places.
Yeah.
And sometimes our voice is, how come you don't remember that?
How many times have we told you?
And then sometimes we leave something somewhere.
Yeah.
So then it's our chance to go, oh, right.
Yeah.
And we talk about that with our kids.
Yeah.
We messed up. Our voice in that case, we were telling you this, but it's that chance to come back and we mess up. Sometimes we do. We give our kids the wrong voice because we've got the wrong voice,
exactly.
and our parents had the wrong voice, and their parents had the wrong.
Yeah.
So it's in there. Sometimes we're gonna mess up, and I'm gonna criticize myself, and I'm gonna do that same voice to my kids that I don't want them.
Yeah.
I don't want to do, but we just can also. That's also an opportunity for compassion and communication to say, you know what, that voice is in me, and sometimes it comes out. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Go back and teach them that they can pay attention to that inner voice and rework that inner voice.
Yeah.
Even though that may be what came into my head, I see that now, and now I'm going to do something. I'm going to say something else to myself.
Yeah.
And because I know my daughter, she gets real nervous about leaving things now.
Yeah.
And so we talk about it. And what's her voice saying? I mess up, or I'm a quitter, or I forget things when I should remember them.
Yeah. What's my problem? Why do I keep forgetting stuff?
And that's actually not going to help her remember.
No, it's not. Yep.
She's going to be super anxious about forgetting things, and then what's going to happen? She's going to forget things.
Yeah.
And so we got to come back to them and say, all right, let's rewrite that voice a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
Let's go in and hug that girl that forgot something because it's really stressful to forget things, and let's make a different plan.
I love that picture. Hug that girl that forgot something. It's funny you brought up this story because just last night, Abby and I were driving somewhere and we were listening to podcast episode 3 about fear and shame. And Abby said, Dad, I like this podcast with you and Mom talking. And, just so you know, sometimes you do that whenever I forget things. And the other day I forgot something. I told Mom not to tell you because I didn't want you to get upset at me and do the whole fear and shame thing. So it also, even there, she's like less apt. She was like, it's harder to be open and honest with you because I'm afraid I'm going to get there. I even know we've had conflict about playing ping pong. As silly as that, playing ping pong, because I get frustrated that she's not catching on with ping pong as much as Brendan's catching on. And so it's not as much fun sometimes in those moments to do that. Why? Because it triggers something in me. And then I start getting critical of her. And then she'll be like, why are you so upset about and I'll even tell her, it's because somehow in me, I feel like I got better at tennis and ping pong and all these sports by yelling at myself. I told myself, stop sucking at this, go get better. And so I feel like sometimes if I do this with you, you'll somehow get motivated or mad enough at me that you'll want to do it.
Yeah, we can start to believe that inner critic.
Yes.
And it's really easy to believe that is the way to motivate ourselves, especially, and our children. We think we've got to come down on them. They've got to know because otherwise they'll never change. And it's a real flip. This was a real hard thing for me to even really buy into or see. I thought that sounds too good to be true. I could move in with love and compassion and people will change.
Yeah.
No, first I have to come in hard and really come down on myself and others. And then maybe you can get nice.
Yeah.
You can't move in with kindness and have people change. But it's blown my mind how many times that actually does work.
Yeah.
Where people are more likely to take responsibility and own what they did and then create a change plan.
Yep.
And like you said, Abby felt like she had to hide.
Yep.
Where that's not going to change her if she needs to grow in an area. It's just a skill you need to build, right? But she feels like she needs to hide that she has a deficit instead of being able to take responsibility. And we want people to be able to come, we want our kids to come to us and say, I don't think I'm very good at this,
Yeah.
or I messed
Yeah.
up. And
Yep.
especially when they're teenagers,
Yeah.
the stakes are high.
Of course, yeah,
If
yeah.
they mess up,
Yeah.
you want them coming to
Yes,
you.
yep, yep.
So you want to lay that groundwork. We make mistakes.
Yep.
Don't let that inner voice beat you down. Come to us, talk to us, and that has to start. We have to model it with ourselves. We have to model it with them. Come to us, and then we can make a plan. And it was crazy to me to buy in or start acting on the idea that I could come with compassion and empathy, and that would actually yield the change and help them with that inner voice, and help them with the hiding of, the secrecy, or I don't want to tell you because of the shame, and that inner voice beating them down.
Well, that brings me to 2 points. So one, what you were saying is, when we are criticizing and using that negative voice with ourselves or with our kids, we're not taking responsibility. So literally when Abby would mess up and forget, and I would use that critic I'm not actually allowing her to take responsibility. I am saying I will take responsibility to motivate you to do it differently by criticizing you, And so the ability to actually have the empathy is a switch. It reminds me of an example Dr. Becky Bailey used of a car coming on the sidewalk that we could look at that and say, what an idiot. What an idiot drives on the sidewalk, like as we're walking. They shouldn't be on the sidewalk. But she's like, you can do that all day long. The car's still going to kill you. It's going to run you over. The only way change can happen is through acceptance. It's not through resistance. I have to accept the fact that that car's there and then decide what I want to do with it. So, for instance, with the forgetting things, accept the fact that that's a challenge. It's something that's hard for me to remember stuff, and then implement ways to remember that stuff, right? So that's the first point. The second point is that I want to end our podcast with is how I think a lot of parents, and specifically we can do this too, we can get triggered with, I can't do this, or I'm just too dumb, or this, I can't, because typically there'll be a tantrum involved, and there's something in us triggers that of like, oh, come on, stop. Lots of people will call it whining. Lots of people will, say like, well, you can't if you keep saying can't. There'll be a lot of like, we'll come back at it. We'll resist their negative talk because we don't want it. We don't want to hear all that. It's gross. We instead will resist it and sometimes tell them to not show us that, right? I don't want to hear all that. I'd rather you just change that. Just say this. Just talk to yourself like that. And not to say there isn't some power in changing how we talk to ourselves, but I think first we need to receive it and accept it. So what does that look like for you when the kids are being really negative? You talked about us showing self-compassion to ourselves. How do we then give that to the kids?
Yeah, because I definitely want to say, if I don't know, if my child says, I can't clean this room, it's too overwhelming, or I can't, this math problem is too hard.
Yep.
You do want to say, no, it's not, or yes, you can.
You just cleaned the room last week. Give me a break.
I just want to like meet that that place where they're at with equal force back, and hopefully shove them over, right? But then everyone just gets, digs in.
Yeah.
So, and usually they don't believe you, even if they start, okay, yeah, sure, I'm really smart. Yeah, I can really do this. You can see that they're not really buying in. So the first thing is I just want to hear them. Tell me about that. What feels overwhelming? I want to meet that with empathy. And I want to put myself in their shoes. I want to think about something. Maybe it's not that exact thing, but there's a place in my life I felt that same feeling.
Yep.
So I want to get there with them. And I want them to know I hear you. And because there are places in my life that feel like real big mountains.
Yep.
I don't know how to get over that mountain. And I might want to look at that and go, I can't do it. And just telling me I can, I'm like, okay, well, you're not the person to talk to, because clearly you don't understand how big my mountain
that's what
is.
I see a lot of times is parents will counter it, and the kids will learn, I'm not going to come to you with that story, right? And that's kind of where I wanted to like switch that in our ending is just, there's a story they're believing. And I want them to share that story. And they're sharing it with you because they want you to hold it with them. They're not asking you to agree with it. They're saying, can you hold this with me? I don't like this story either. It feels gross inside. It's hurting me inside, right? And so too often we say, I don't like that story. Get that story out of here. Here's a different story, And even though the story you're offering them may be better, they aren't going to receive that story if I don't first receive theirs. So as I'm talking over this, I'm holding my hands out towards Sarah open, and it's a symbol of open hands, of like, I want to receive your story. Tell me about the story you're believing. And the kid is looking to you saying, help me shape this narrative. I don't want to live my life believing this crap either. Can you help me with it? And so I want to come with open hands and just receive it. even if it's preposterous, even if it's ridiculous. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to receive it, because in that moment, what I've noticed is kids will either shut down and stop telling you, or they'll double down and say, yeah, you really don't know at all. And the most common complaint kids have is, you don't understand me. You don't get it. I just had 3 teenagers in my office yesterday who none of their parents understand them. So the point is, the parents aren't receiving the story that the kid is trying to tell them, because the parents think that's a harmful story. So I understand why they want to move it.
Yeah, you don't want your kid believing that. So let's just sweep that away.
Yeah, so I want to be able to receive it, so then I can start helping them change it. And one of the ways I helped change the story of mine, just an idea, what I tell a lot of kids, and so I'll end with just this technique, is I just started labeling some of these story things that brought me a lot of anxiety and fear. I just started labeling them as lies. And so I would just get into the habit of, when I was feeling very anxious or there was a lot of negative self-talk, I just wanted to put them in a different drawer in my head, because I felt like there was this really strong pathway called, these statements might be true. You might be incompetent, Kyle. You might be a failure as a father. And these things were driving too much of what I was doing. And I noticed they were, because of the anxiety, the anger, all those things that were coming out of it. That's the fruit that came out. So I thought, I'm just going to label these and see what happens. So I started anytime that I start to feel that, I just put on my notes section of my computer, lie, and then write the statement. Lie, and then just go. And I keep doing it until I felt some relief of those thoughts. I could actually receive my own story, look at it and go, that's gross. I can't believe I believe these things about myself. No wonder I'm yelling at people. No wonder I was so upset at the kids yesterday. No wonder I'm so anxious about this thing at work, right? So I just think that's one technique that I found very helpful. Is there any that you would share at all before we end?
No, I think kind of similar to what you're saying. I look at it and go, this is all made up. These scenarios, what I'm saying, it's what I'm creating. And I can choose to create something else. I can choose to say something else, create something else. And one thing I always tell myself, and I say to our kids and stuff, is your brain believes you. So if I tell myself I can't do it, or I'm a bad mom, or whatever it is.
I'm not good enough. I'm not capable enough.
Your brain starts to create that, because you're building your reality, and it moves in that direction.
Yeah.
If I, like you said, if I say it's a lie, or if I say, okay, well, that's one option, but I can also say I'm a very patient person. And I can say what I am.
Yeah.
With intentionality, with conviction, because I'm saying the other thing with some pretty strong conviction. Yeah. So I have to equally hold the other words and the other things and say, that's what I'm moving to. That's what I am. And your brain will move you in that direction. Our brains are very powerful. And it's the same thing with our kids. We start with ourselves, build that in ourselves, and then model that for them and help them to recreate that, help them to do that for themselves in their lives.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'd love for you, for all the people listening, if you are enjoying this content, would love for you to go and rate us on iTunes or Google, whatever platform you're using, and definitely leave some comments. Once again, I've been mentioning this lately. If you have specific situations you'd love for Sara and I to talk about or address, we want to start filling up some of our content with listeners and their questions they have about their kids, or even the dynamics in regards to parenting with a spouse, because that's a big part of what we're doing. So I hope you're able to glean some information on this, on how to approach this negative self-talk differently within yourself and also within your kids, because it's such an important part of helping them form their identity and helping write their narrative. So thank you for listening today, and I hope you have a great night. The Art of Raising Humans podcast should not be considered or used as counseling, but for educational purposes only.